Welcome, everybody, to the Business Book Club Interviews with the Author. Today, I'd like to introduce Gary Ryan, author of 3 books. Gary is actually coming to us from Australia today, so thank you so much for joining us, Gary.
You're welcome, Teresa. All the way from down under. It's morning here and afternoon at least, if not evening, where you are over in the States.
Yep, but we're rolling into the evening. So I thought we could start today's interview with you sharing a little bit about your books. Like I said, you have 3 that you've written, which is amazing. Would you like to go ahead and open up with a introduction and a little bit about your books?
Cool. So firstly, they're all 3 business books, and you can see them up above me just there, but I will show you also here. And my business is called Organizations That Matter. I've been running my business since February 2007, and fundamentally, I work with businesses that understand that they've got human beings in them, and human beings matter, and human beings are absolutely not human resources, human capital, or human assets. So that's the space that I'm coming from, and everything I do is about the leadership and the culture in the organization, which is a values-based high-performance culture. So my first book called What Really Matters for Young Professionals, how to master 15 practices to accelerate your career. I self-published that in 2010. And the audience for that was intended to be early career starters, Teresa.
Okay.
And it's got very simple things in it around employability skills and very practical things that an early career starter can do to quickly get some runs on the board, but equally learn how to navigate their career and to deliver high quality results early on. Fascinatingly, because a lot of my coaching is with managing directors and CEOs and executives, I have given them a copy of that book over time, and many of them over time have said, you know what, I know that book wasn't written for me, but it's got a lot of handy reminders in
Yes.
it.
Yes.
So that was that one. And then my second book, which I published in November of 2021, it's called Disruption Leadership Matters, Lessons for Leaders from the Pandemic. And this one was catalyzed by some of the initial things that businesses were doing, particularly here in Australia, and it turned out globally in the first lockdown of 2020 when the pandemic first started. And with my introduction about human beings and not human resources, there's a lot of leaders out there that prior to the pandemic would be saying things like, oh, people are our greatest asset, and our people really matter, and our people this and that.
Oh, wow.
But in my country, Teresa, in the first 6 weeks, we've got a population of 27 million, so about the same as California.
Okay.
And in that first 6 weeks, 800,000 people were stood down or fired by their companies.
Oh, my.
800,000. And all of these leaders and business owners who were saying how great their people were proved that their people were nothing less than just a number.
Mm.
And that actually comes back to what I teach people is called their mental models, which are their theories around how the world works. What most people don't understand, Teresa, is that our language, the words we use, words have meanings. Unfortunately, a lot of people use words that they don't truly understand their meanings, nor do they understand where they came from. So as an example, the vast majority of people in business, particularly people working in human resources, and one of my 3 degrees is in human resource management. So I have got a leg to stand on here when I talk about this. And it was actually when I was doing that degree in 1999 that I realized how terrible it is that we call people resources, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what people don't understand is that the term human resources actually came from Henry Ford and Frederick Winslow Taylor, who joined forces in 1908 to create the production line at Ford. And the production line's been amazing for human beings. But they formed and created what was known as the scientific management method. And the scientific management method explicitly stated that human beings were part of the machine.
Okay.
And that's how the term human resources was born.
I see.
You are part of the machine. Now, like any machine, if a part becomes unreliable, if a part becomes not necessary, what do? we get rid of it.
Yeah.
Okay. So disruption leadership matters. While all of that sounds quite negative, right? What I didn't want to do was write a negative book. So I set that context very early in the book. But the book itself is actually around finding examples globally. Like one of the companies that I mentioned is a company called the CP Group, which has 400,000 employees across 20 companies based out of Thailand. And companies of that size, there's companies in the USA like the Barry Waymiller Group, right down to small family businesses here in Australia, one of which was really terribly affected by the pandemic and the 15 staff in that organization. However, those organizations did not go and get rid of their people. They did the exact opposite. Every single one of the companies that I mentioned, it's fascinating, Teresa, that while I wrote the book between May of 2020 and November of 2021, in fact, I had to stop writing in September of 2021. Every single one of the businesses that I name in this book, from the global ones down to the small business ones, have all grown since I published the book.
Oh, it's amazing. That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
But it's no surprise because they kept their people.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And their mental model is that in every downturn, and let's be honest, the pandemic created for many, many businesses a significant downturn. There is one thing that is definitely going to happen. And what's that? What's definitely going to happen at some point when you have a downturn economically?
Oh, that it's going to come right back up.
It's going to come back up, right? Now, they all knew that at this point here, we're going to need our people to take the opportunities that will have presented themselves as a result of other businesses either going out of business or downsizing too much that they no longer have the talent to take advantage of that, right? Every
Right.
single one of them had that mental model, right?
And then it's
And
the uphill battle trying to get back up because they have to rehire, retrain, redo everything all over again. Okay.
correct. It's exactly correct. And these businesses, so like the CP Group, again, and look, I think a lot of countries, a lot of people in the West have a very negative view of Asian businesses. Like we think of sweatshops and we think of them in that way. But actually, there's a lot of incredible businesses in Asia, like the CP Group, where Superchai Che Ravanon, the CEO of the CP Group, he immediately got his leadership team together. And he said to them, I want you to go through every single line item in your finances and in your budgets that's non-salary related. So go into, instead of your salary budget, go into every other budget and find the savings to pay for people that in some instances, we don't know how long they're not going to be able to work for, but we need to retrain them anyway. We need to work out what retraining do these people need for when this happens.
So in this way, actually, this topic is very timely to the economics of the world right now, because right now we're seeing a huge increase in inflation. And what do companies typically do when, the costs go up and buying goods goes up? And so they start to cut their costs, but they start at the employee level, which what you're saying is that it doesn't serve them to start letting people off. It's the time to actually start engaging them, training them, and getting them prepared for when the economy starts to come back, so that you're starting on like a level up from everyone else who did the opposite.
That's exactly right. Now, I'm not saying that you would never, ever sack people or make them redundant and move them on. I'm not saying you would never do that. The challenge is that too many businesses do it as their very first strategy, and they do it as their first strategy because for many organizations, it is their largest expense. Okay. But they're not seeing their people actually as an investment.
Right.
And the mental model behind that's very, very different, right? So I'm not saying, look, if a company, if someone was listening to this right now and they just had this epiphany that, oh my gosh, we've never had that mindset and we actually haven't developed our people anyway during the good times, because this is the other problem, right? They don't even invest in the good times in the talent of their people. like when money gets tight, they're certainly not going to have it to invest in the down times. And this is another mindset to have, which Bob Chapman, who's the CEO of the Barry Waymiller Group, which is a USA company,
Mhm.
he talks about, you know how we talk about in business a lot, get the right people in the right seats on the bus. Have you heard
Yeah.
that phrase?
Uh-huh. Geno traction.
Yeah. But interestingly, he talks about, but before we get the right people in the right seats on the bus, we actually have to build a safe bus.
Mm.
And a safe bus is a business that can sustain financially economic downturns because they're guaranteed to come.
Yes. Hmm.
Again, this is a mental model, though. This is a theory about how to operate a business. Now, since Bob got that epiphany in 1997, at that stage, the Barry Waymiller Group, and now just so folks know, and I reference them in both this book, in Disruption Leadership Matters, um, the Barry Waymiller Group are a business that fundamentally own and have acquired over time all of the manufacturing machinery that makes the packages for pretty much everything you would get on a Walmart shelf.
Okay. So they're
So
doing well.
they don't put the things in the packages, but they make the packages. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
Right. Now, in 1997, they were 200 million US dollar turnover with about 1,200 employees. Today, they're turning over about 4 billion with 12,000 employees, and everything, all of their financial numbers just smash their competitors out of the market. They just keep buying their competitors along the way.
Okay.
And they're an organization that is founded upon a 4-letter word called care.
Okay.
Okay, which is a very, very different approach. And they prove now. Simon Sinek, you familiar with him? Simon Sinek.
No, no, I'm not.
Yeah, so Sinek is Sinek. The Folk Within Your Business book club. Start with Why was his very first book. He's extremely famous.
Yes, I've
Yeah,
read that book.
yeah, yeah. Okay. And his most recent book's called The Infinite Game. And when Simon went to the Barry Waymiller Group in 2012,
Hmm.
he looked around and he went, "Oh my God, everything that I preach is real here." And he said, "Thankfully, because I wasn't really sure that everything I preach could be true, but now I can see, I can touch it, I can feel it, and I can be at peace with myself that what I'm preaching can work and does work because I've got the evidence here." And he's been back there several times. My understanding is Harvard now has about 145 case studies on the Barry Waymiller Group
Wow.
about how to build a culture of care that is unbelievably profitable. And the mindset there, I mean, there's a little bit of a story behind that. Literally it goes back to 1997, and there's plenty of interviews where Bob Chapman tells this story. But he was literally at a friend's child's wedding, and the child was young adult, was getting married, and it was a female, and they're Baptists, and it was a traditional wedding. The groom at the altar, and the father walking the bride down the aisle, and the father was Bob's family friend. And while he's walking his daughter down the aisle, Bob's sitting there watching and thinking to himself, "Gosh, I know this feeling," because Bob's had a typical Brady Bunch family with his three and his second wife's three, who were all adults by this stage. And he's sitting there thinking, "Gosh, my friend's really hoping that this groom is going to care for his daughter the way that he and his wife had done raising her."
Right.
In an instant, Teresa, he just had this moment where at that stage he had about 1,200 employees, where he thought, "You know what? We got 1,200 people in our business, and irrespective of how old they are, because some were in their 60s, at some point they were someone's child.
Yes.
And at some point that parent had sent that child
Into the
to
world.
into the world to work with them, and equally as probably hoped that Bob and his leaders cared for their child in the same manner." And he had this epiphany, like he literally felt like God tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Bob, you're not doing that."
Oh,
You're not caring. You're running your business like an accountant because he was. You're treating them like resources. And he says that in that moment, Teresa, and again, I talk about this quite a bit in Disruption Leadership Matters. In that moment, he decided that's going to change. We're gonna start to care for our people. Now, this might sound all soft and cuddly and stuff like that, right? Um, and he equally said we weren't going to disrespect people by treating them like children either. That's not what he meant. It's not what we mean, but
right.
it's about adopting that level of care. That's what it means. Yes, they're adults. They're not your children, so don't treat them like you're their parent, but adopt that level of care. And so what does that look like? I mean, I've got 5 children, so I can really relate. Uh, when you care about your children, do you discipline them?
Absolutely. Yep.
And are you slow in doing that? But do you all equally do it in a caring, educative way?
Yes. Yep.
Ideally, you do, right? So that's what they mean by care, that we care enough to tell you the truth if your performance is dropping and to try and work out what's causing that. We tell you the truth about your behavior if it's out of line, and we take action to work with you to correct your behavior, like any parent would do when they care about their child. So while it does sound all soft and cuddly, it's actually got a very hard edge to it at the same time.
Yeah.
And equally, if people, really don't want to conform to what the culture is, then they help them find somewhere else to work.
Yep, that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. And is your company like for smaller individuals who just have a few people? I think that people maybe business owners don't take it as, I guess, seriously. But maybe that's not true. Maybe that's an assumption I'm making. But I guess I'm gonna start that whole thing over. Uh, this idea of treating our employees with such great care and as they are a part of our families is so important and so significant. And I see as a consistent, I guess, reoccurring pattern in many stories that I hear as well in regards to people building their teams. Because actually, one thing that I've noticed in small businesses is that they struggle with finding the right people and keeping employees and getting them to, perform at the levels that they want them to perform at. So, perhaps introducing a little bit of this care method, where you're right. I think it's easy to say, oh, they're not a good fit, move on. Where if we just maybe put in a little bit of that, the parenting aspect of it without treating them like children, um, and help them develop into the person that we ideally want to see a part of our team. And if they're willing and able, then you're putting in the time in it, and it is investment because it is your time. You're not necessarily paying for them to do training, but it is an investment in your time, their time, and it could be a valuable asset that even small business owners who are starting with, very little disposable cash in their business to implement and be able to create a stronger base early on. So I love it. It's very valuable, and I really appreciate you um, sharing that in your book. Sounds excellent. I think I'm going to go get that one next.
Well, the other thing here is, and this is very relevant to small businesses, is that you need to be clear about the culture of your own business as a leader, as a business owner. What is the culture? And the culture fundamentally is, how do we do things around here? How do we handle when a mistake happens? How do we handle when something that should be celebrated happens? Like those sort of symbols are part of your culture. Yeah, are people clear about what their job is? So I've found in my professional work through organizations that matter, and I talk a lot about this in the book, is that most people, unfortunately, Teresa, cannot say out loud, this is the name of my job. They can do that bit, but they can't say, and this is how I know I'm doing a great job.
Right. Yes.
These are the signs that I'm doing a great job. They don't know.
Right.
And if they can't say it out loud, no matter how complex their job is, if they can't say out loud, this is my job and this is how I know I'm doing a great job, then that means on a day-to-day basis, an hour-to-hour basis, a minute-to-minute basis, they're probably making decisions and taking actions that are not helping the business
Right.
because it's not clear. I talk about cash is king and clarity is queen, and actually we need both together. When a business isn't making the money it should make, it's lacking clarity, and that's the place to go and raise clarity. People are not clear about what they're doing. Now, maybe that's because you're not clear about your culture. Often when I ask business owners, what are the clear values that you have here? Now, sometimes I'll point to a wall where the values are. So, well, okay, how do you use them? And when was the last time you had a conversation with anyone in this business about what those values actually look like in action here? Uh, um, so I said, they're not real. They're just on a wall. And so the Barry Waymiller Group and other businesses I talk about and demonstrate, it's the ones that actually have them real, have a clear vision of where we're going, they have them real. And the technology, the key technology is in chapter 6.
Mhm.
And the key technology is the quality of our conversations.
Okay.
Right. Now think about this. People are in conversation in business all the time.
Hmm.
But are they conscious of the quality of that conversation?
Right.
Now, the quality of our conversation leads to the quality of our decisions, which then leads to the quality of our actions, the things we do, which over time impacts the quality of our performance. Do those connections all make sense?
Yes. Hmm.
Now, if the quality of our conversation, unbeknownst to us, because we've never invested in getting high quality in it, is actually low at the start, that means we're probably making decisions that are wrong. Which
Right.
means we're probably taking the wrong actions, and then we're surprised when we're not getting the performance we want. But who do we blame? We blame the people.
I was gonna say everybody but ourselves.
Of course, that's exactly right, Therese. We're going to blame but we've not invested. And because every human being pretty much can speak, we all think we're great at it. However, when you've got I suppose the training that I have, just the number of times you see leaders talking over the top of people, for starters, just that one little thing. You think people over time learn just shut up? And the lack of going to people at the front line to ask them for ideas for the solutions to the problems that they're facing on a day-to-day basis is just mind-boggling. How leaders think that they can sit, particularly in sort of medium to larger business, how they think they can sit in their offices and solve the problems that the front line are experiencing without actually going and asking them, what do you think
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. And and strangely, they'll invest in those solutions that are never going to work.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
go, just go. Peter Drucker made it really clear. I mean, he's the sort of the father of leadership and culture, if you like.
Hmm.
Theoretical point of view, Peter Drucker, he was really clear, go and ask the people. They'll know. And they do. But conversation, so it's the key technology that I teach the people that I work with. I start with the leaders first. They have to learn how to actually have high quality conversations. They start to need to model that. And then we need to start to build that throughout the rest of the organization. So that's the second book. And then my final book, Yes for Success, How to Achieve Life, Harmony and Fulfillment, was published in October of 2023, so just last year. I forgot to say that was a #1 Amazon Kindle bestseller, this
Nice.
one.
I could see why.
And this one debuted at #6, and Oprah was #1 when I debuted. All are self-published, and I was fortunate these are both in audiobook version. And Yes for Success was when I debuted on Audible, they listed as a hot new release, which was really kind of them. And when you're self-published, all those little things matter. So you may be familiar that globally, the Gallup State of the Workplace report, which has gone on for this, will be the 13th year this year. We haven't got this year's results yet, but last year's report was unfortunately very consistent with the previous 11 years, where globally, 78% of people are disengaged with their workplace.
Wow.
Nearly 4 out of 5 people. So nearly 8 out of 10 people. So 22% of people are considered engaged with their workplace. in the USA, this number you're going to find staggering. 18% of people are actively disengaged. Now, what that means is through self-reporting, people are consciously taking action in the workplace that is detrimental to the business, and they know it.
Oh,
Two
really?
out of, yeah, they know that they're doing, and that's self-reported. In my country, it's 11%, so 1 out of 10. Now, that's about culture. That's about recruitment. That's about the level of care or not in the business, all of those factors. But there's another factor contributing to that, because it's not just about the leadership and the culture, which is a major factor. And yes, for success is actually about this other element. And I believe the fact that that data has been existing for so long,
Hmm.
and the fact that I've been in business myself since 2007 and literally worked with tens of thousands of people now,
Hmm.
mostly here in Australia, that most people have actually given up on being responsible, truly responsible for their own life, and have settled for a job.
Oh my. Okay.
And, and most people are not working at the intersection of their passion and their talents. Look familiar, by the way?
TEDx.
So that was when I came to the 10X, well, I've been doing that for years, but I did it like that. But they because they haven't done the work to get clear about what are my passions and what are my talents, right?
Hmm.
And equally, people are conscious of, yeah, I probably should have a vision. So cognitively, they say, Teresa, yeah, I should have a vision, but they don't know how to actually identify their unique vision. And
Yeah.
then they certainly don't know how to take that vision and turn it into a clear plan for themselves.
Yeah.
So that's what Yes for Success is. And I probably should have written this book first, because I've been facilitating a live program of that and virtual programs since 2010. So I probably should have written this one first, but it is what it is, I guess. I wrote it last year. In fact, catalyzed by coming into the 10X world. I went, that's that book I should have written. And then I committed to writing it in less than 5 months, even though the other two had taken 12 and 18 months respectively. And I actually published it in 179 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And it's 20,000 words longer than either of the other two books as well.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we definitely 10x that.
Yeah.
um, yeah.
I
So
started.
this is,
Oh, go ahead.
you asked the question, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say I've been reading it, and there's a lot of really great stuff in there. There you talk about resistance, and you talk about core values and how to find your core values. It was a really valuable exercise to me because a lot of a lot of a big part of being in business is understanding your core values and then bringing that into your culture um and nurturing those core values in your culture, right? And
Mm,
for a while there, like as a young adult, we have our parents and we have our grandparents, and they're reiterating those core values. Then you leave the home, and then you don't hear them as consistently. And I kind of felt like I lost wind of what are my core values. There are things I feel strongly about, but I never thought about it like that. And that's how you phrased it in the book. Like, what are the
mm.
things that would make you really angry when you see that are like injustices? And I was like, oh yeah, I know those. If someone messes with my family, I'm on that. If someone does something wrong, and standing up, doing the right thing, so integrity, um standing up for other people when someone else is down, and stepping up and being there for them, that's important to me. So it was really difficult till this point to really nail down what my core values were. So I appreciate that was, I mean, it's a wonderful book. And I'm not even completely through it, so I apologize. I tried before we jumped on.
It's a working book though, that one.
Right,
It's a
exactly.
book, yeah, it's a working book. And that's why I built the online course that quite a number of people have gone and tapped into as well, because they can actually fill out all the answers as they go. But just on that point, Michelle Hunt, who's an African American,
Hmm.
who I learned that values exercise from in the year 2000, I
Okay.
interviewed her exactly this time last week for my podcast,
Oh, that's wonderful. I
which
did
was
see that.
just a life thrill for me to be able to speak directly with Michelle. And she's a hero to me, and to have that opportunity to interview her, and her own personal story is just remarkable, about growing up on military bases in the South, in the 1950s into the early 1960s. And her father was the only African American military officer. So
Yeah.
they were the only family that were African Americans on the bases where the officers lived. And
That's
so
really
they experienced direct racism every day from adults and children. And how her parents, that she calls dream makers, helped sustain her and her brothers through values. I mean, they were being taught very clear values in a very gentle way, I guess, but it made them so strong. And it wasn't till some pretty racist things happened that Michelle actually understood what was going on, and certainly her whole career. I mean, she ended up an advisor to President Clinton.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Oh
That's
yeah, yeah, yeah. And was actually working directly with Vice President Al Gore at the time to work on the culture of the administration of the US government. And that was
okay.
such a yeah, she's done incredible work throughout her career. She's worked in private enterprise as well for a company called Herman Miller, which
Mhm.
were globally recognized as a furniture company. So she's definitely been in both sides. She was also a female prison warden as well, like the
Whoa.
diversity of her career. And she's also helped facilitate the creation of a vision and values statement for a whole country.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. So to have look, I've leaned on Michelle's work ever since the year 2000. She's just an incredible human being. She's Michelle with a single L.
I'll have to look her up. What was her
Yeah,
last name?
Michelle Hunt. Dreammakers.org. Dreammakers.org. Dreammakers, one word. So, folks, go check out her. Michelle's multi-author as well with the Dreammaker series, and has also co-authored with Peter Senge and David Cooper Ryder, who are also very, very famous in the business book world.
Okay, very good. I better do my homework.
I'm supposed to be talking about my books, and I'm talking
Yeah.
about everybody else.
Sorry. So let's jump back into.
You were just talking about your experience of reading the book at that stage. And, similarly to the core values in that section, there's a section around turning points. And as you mentioned,
Oh, that's
resistance.
right. Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah. And resistance is just such a powerful concept once you understand it. And yeah, I explain mental models in the book as well. And they set the context for you being able to do it. And again, I want to really re-emphasize that with yes for success. I'm not telling anyone what their answer for success is. I'm just guiding them through a process that I know works for them to help identify their own unique answer. And then when it gets to the strategy section, we've got lots of examples to help catalyze thinking for people, just to be able to, yeah, just be more fulfilled. And we talk about harmony because in reality, the idea of balance in a single day is just not realistic. It's an unrealistic target. And what I talk about there is, let's say someone is studying maybe while they're working full time and they've got exams. Well, they're going to be focused heavily. They're going to be out of balance with most other things in their life through that exam period. But equally, when they go on a holiday with their family, they're going to be out of balance probably with their study and other things. But we talk about how you go into maintenance mode with things that do really matter, like your health and fitness, for example. So yeah, people can check that out. Again, they're available. All books are available through me and or through Amazon or any online good online bookstore or audio bookstore.
okay. And then what I'll do too is within this recording, I will include a link as well so that people can find it fairly easily. Um, so one question that I wanted to go back, the career development, the first book. Is there a recommendation to young individuals beginning to go into their careers who may not know like what they want to do or what they would be good at?
So the recommendation there is to explore, have an explorer's mindset. Do something, get a job doing anything. And look, I'm big on, having part-time jobs before you even start your career. I
Mhm.
mean, I've been working since I was 10 years of age. I was a morning paper boy. So I would get up at 5 a.m., 6 days a week. I can still remember it was for $11.25. And I rode, my round was just over 7 miles long. So it was quite a long round. Half of it was an industrial area. And this is rain, hail, or shine. And I had a bridge I used to have to ride. I remember crying riding over that bridge because in winter time the wind would be howling in your face and the bridge felt so big to get over. And there were guard dogs that would get out and try to attack you, and you'd be scared for your life and all that. And I'm not wanting
A
to
dangerous
traumatize.
job.
I'm not trying to traumatize people, but interesting. One day when that happened, I actually dumped about 10 papers. I just dumped papers because this guard dog was out, Teresa.
Hmm.
Now, somehow there was no mobile phones or anything like that back in those days.
Hmm.
And somehow Mr. Jim, I can't remember his surname. I just remember we used to call him Mr. Jim. He was standing out the front of the newsagent's shop where we collect our papers from like this. And he said, "You haven't delivered papers to such and such a street." And I'm like, "Yeah, but the guard dog's there." And he goes, it's your job to deliver the papers. Go back and get them and deliver them." So I turned around. I mean, it'd probably be considered abuse these days, but I turned around, went and found my papers. I actually hid my bicycle because I thought I'd be safer if I needed to climb a tree,
Yeah.
because this dog was vicious, right? And anyway, the dog wherever it had gone, and I managed to deliver these papers. Now, fascinatingly, as my career unfolded, I ended up being a senior assessor for the Customer Service Institute of Australia. I led teams to national awards. I've, assessed teams. I've mentored people that have won national awards, etc. But interestingly, I look back on that lesson as that paper boy, and as harsh as it was, I actually learned a lesson as a 10-year-old kid. You got to do what you got to do to deliver.
That's what I was thinking. You got to go back and finish the job. Don't leave that
Yeah.
loop open.
Now what a work ethic. And look, something I guess that since I've come into the 10X world, there was just music to my ears. And my parents, we were very working class. I'm one of 11 children, and we never went without, but we certainly didn't have lots of money. I mean, I never went to a restaurant until I was 17 years of age. Like literally never had a meal in a restaurant because we just couldn't afford to do that. And I remember being with my girlfriend at the Times family who went out to a restaurant, and I'm like, what do I do with all this cutlery? I had no idea, right? But nonetheless, we had plenty of love. We were always fed, we were always clothed, etc. But so with everything we did get taught was work ethic. And
Right.
so when I came into the 10X world and the idea of massive action, and setting the standard for yourself, like we were always taught in my family to be proud of the quality of your work without someone else having to tell you that.
Absolutely.
And I feel so blessed to have that value. And I think today that mindset, which I advocate in what really matters for young professionals, is actually going to help people with their careers big time. Now, so if you're not still sure what your talents and your passions are, but you've got that mindset, you'll work it out. You will work it out, and you will. And this is the other thing I'm a big advocate for early in your career, and still continue to this day, to be honest, Teresa, is look for opportunities above and beyond what your core job is, but you must absolutely do a great job with your core role. You can't be attracted to shiny objects but not do your core role. Do your core role, look for opportunities, and if you see them, ask, can I do that too? But never ask for the money first. Ask for the opportunity, prove you can do it, and then go and say, hey, now I'm doing that. Can you pay me more?
Which, yeah, yeah, I love that. That's a great way of going about it. Actually, that it leads into my next question because speaking of employees, this concept of entrepreneurs that is more and more popular. Um, I wanted to ask, what are your thoughts around an employee who may see maybe on a self journey and is seeing that things are not quite right in the way that things are being done, and they want to be a part of the solution in a positive way? How would you suggest that an employee present that to upper management? Because if presented wrong, it could be, I guess, grounds for creating conflict within the organization. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so simply is, again, make sure whatever your core job is, you've got the runs on the board.
Mhm.
You are doing a great job, because that data is going to matter when you're having the conversation about what you're trying to influence. Right. Now, if you are early in your career, go and learn, find resources like this to learn the conversational skills that you're going to need in that conversation. It's possible, if you put in the work, you could be better at quality conversations than, in fact, the more senior people, the leaders, etc. And
Mhm.
that's fine, because what I teach is one person can significantly raise the quality of a conversation if they have those skills. Just one person can. Right. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be as high as it could be when the others don't have the skills, but it's going to be higher. And largely that's going to be around how you listen and the quality of the questions that you ask. Right. So the package is, make sure you're doing a great job and you've got that evidence.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I'm a big advocate for asking for permission. So you got to ask for permission. Can I have a chat with you about an issue that I'm seeing, and I believe I've got a potential solution? Are you interested in that conversation? And most people are probably going to say yes to that,
Yeah,
right?
that's say no to.
Yeah. Now the point being there, and again, I talk about this in chapter 2 of Disruption Leadership Matters, is that even in that environment, you're trying to educate possibly people higher than you of what the problem is and how it could be solved. It's actually an educational conversation.
Mhm.
Now, I believe everyone has, think of a room of learning, right? Everyone has a room that's your learning room, including the people that own the business, the leaders, etc.
Mhm.
But that room only has one door. There's only one way in and out of someone else's room of learning.
Okay.
So if it has got a door, what are the two basic ways someone from the outside of that room, another person, might get into someone else's learning room through that door? What are the two might get into that room?
The first thing that comes to mind is maybe finding something that that person's interested in learning.
Yeah. So using the door as the metaphor, you got to get through the door. How are you going to get through the door?
Interest, I think. Common interests.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
So which means when it's common interest, you're going to knock on their door.
Oh,
Right.
you're right.
Understand? Yeah, you're
Right.
going to knock on the door, and they're going to open the door, and they're going to either let you in or not, right?
I see.
Versus you open the door and you barge in.
Mm-hmm.
And if you barge into someone's learning room, are you going to be welcome?
No. Mm-mm.
So in other words, they're not going to be listening.
Right.
So the first step is you have to knock on the door and get permission to go into someone else's learning room. Once you've got permission, the chances that they're actually going to listen to you are significantly higher. That's why you've got to have A, evidence that you're doing a great job, and B, you've got to say to them, hey, I've noticed this issue. I believe I've got a solution. Are you interested in having that conversation? Are you interested in my possible solution? Now, you've got to use words like possible, because maybe it isn't the greatest solution, but until you have a conversation, you don't know. So you want to give them control to let you in their room.
Right.
But once you're in, they're going to be much more likely to engage in a better quality conversation, even if they're not skilled in that, because they've now let you in.
Right. Okay.
The, the worst thing you could do is come and say, hey, with your finger pressing on them, oh, I can see this problem and I can fix it. And, you need to do what I tell you. Like, that ain't going to work.
Right. Right. Very valuable. Thank you for that, Gary. That I took notes on that one because I think I could use that in the book club itself.
Yes.
I've never even thought about taking that into consideration, which is something that I need. So in closing, is there anything that you would like to share with your audience at this time?
Yeah. Yes. And look, it's actually in the introduction of Yes for Success, which I believe for all three of my books to be true. And that is that I fundamentally believe, and if anyone's a parent, they will agree with this, that every single human being was born extraordinary. When you first hold a baby in your arms and you look at them, they are just extraordinary. Every single child, no matter, even if they're born with inverted commas, something wrong with them, you're still like, oh my God, they're so extraordinary, right? And really, I want to remind people, and I guess Yes for Success is about that, but the other two books have elements in it too, that I just want to remind people that they're extraordinary, especially adults, because I believe that there are so many adults that have lost that sense that they actually are, and that we have this innate capacity to be extraordinary because we were actually born with it. And so I guess part of my influence in the world is I want to help re-spark, reignite, relit that flame for people, to help them just be whatever extraordinary means for them. But I want to help them do that.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much, Gary, for being here with us today. And with that, well, you have a wonderful day.
You too.